Chapter 22 of The Adventures of Reddy Fox. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Recording by Kangaroo 692. The Adventures of Reddy Fox by Thornton Burgess. Chapter 22. Old Mr. Buzzard's Keen Sight. Old Granny Fox had thought that when she fooled Bowser the Hound up into that old pasture on the edge of the mountain, she could take her time going home. She was tired and hot, and had planned to pick out the shadiest spots going back. She had thought that Farmer Brown's boy would soon join Bowser the Hound, when Bowser made such a fuss about having found the old house into which Granny had run. But Farmer Brown's boy had not yet appeared, and Granny Fox was getting worried. Could it be that he had not followed Bowser the Hound after all? Granny Fox went out on a high point and looked, but she could see nothing of Farmer Brown's boy and his gun. Just then, old Mr. Buzzard came sailing down out of the blue sky and settled himself on a tall, dead tree. Now, Granny Fox hadn't forgotten how old Mr. Buzzard had warned Peter Rabbit just as she was about to pounce on him. But suddenly she thought that old Mr. Buzzard might be of use to her. So old Granny Fox smoothed out her skirts and walked over to the foot of the tree where old Mr. Buzzard sat. "How do you do today, neighbor Buzzard?" inquired Granny Fox, smiling up at old Mr. Buzzard. "I'm so as to be up and about, thank you," replied old Mr. Buzzard, spreading his wings out so that air could blow under them. "My!" exclaimed old Granny Fox. "What splendid great wings you have, Mr. Buzzard. It must be grand to be able to fly. I suppose you can see a great deal from up there in the blue sky, Mr. Buzzard." Old Mr. Buzzard felt flattered. "Yes," said he. "I can see all that's going on in the Green Meadows and in the Green Forest." "Oh, Mr. Buzzard, you don't really mean that!" exclaimed old Granny Fox, just as if she wanted to believe it but couldn't. "Yes, I can," replied old Mr. Buzzard. "Really, Mr. Buzzard? Really? Oh, I can't believe that your eyes are so sharp as that. Now I know where Bowser the Hound is, and where Farmer Brown's boy is, but I don't believe you could see them." Old Mr. Buzzard never said a word, but spread his broad wings, and in a few minutes he had sailed up, until he looked like a tiny speck to old Granny Fox. Now old Granny Fox had not told the truth when she said she knew where Farmer Brown's boy was. She thought she would trick old Mr. Buzzard into telling her. In a few minutes, down came old Mr. Buzzard. "Bowser the Hound is up in the old back pasture," said he. "Right!" cried old Granny Fox, clapping her hands. "And where is Farmer Brown's boy?" "Farmer Brown's boy is—" Old Mr. Buzzard paused. "Where?" asked Granny Fox so eagerly that old Mr. Buzzard looked at her sharply. "You said you knew, so what's the use of telling you?" said old Mr. Buzzard. Then he added, "But if I were you, I certainly would get home right smart soon." "Why? Do tell me what you saw, Mr. Buzzard," begged Granny Fox. But old Mr. Buzzard wouldn't say another word, so old Granny Fox started for home as fast as she could run. Oh dear, I do hope Reddy Fox minded me and stayed in the house, she muttered. End of chapter 22. Recording by Kangaroo 692.